Hello and welcome to Post Popcorn Picks, the podcast where we here at the Puyallup Post talk about the newest releases out in the theaters. And this time, we're talking about Rampage starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I don't know why I'm gesticulating so much with my arms. They can't see that, it's audio only.
But I can see it, and it gets me motivated.
We're going to do what we usually do with this podcast, where we do like a little 5 to 10 minute spoiler-free, what do we think of the movie kind of situation, and then we're going to go into a just a fun little improv prop synopsis. So, do you want to start us off this time?
Sure. Having been an avid player of Rampage growing up, and having us talk about beforehand that we needed a movie to trash, I was excited to watch this movie and not like it. I was very ready. I was ready to pick it apart. And, you know, there were definitely parts that I could be a little more strict on and be like, this movie sucks because of this and that. But for the most part, I actually really enjoyed it. And I'm very sad about that.
Why are you sad about it?
Because I wanted to hate this movie. You know, I just, there's so many things you can gripe about, like Dwayne Johnson, who pretty much plays himself in every movie he's in, and somebody would argue, like, he has no range, but I mean, I watched WWE a lot growing up, so I can see Dwayne Johnson do anything, and I'll probably still show up and cheer. And Naomi Harris was really cool, too. I'd never seen her before. My roommate was like, oh, she's a ninja assassin, and I pretended. I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But her part in this movie, she was really good. Like, any part, for the most part, that I was laughing at was due to her. She kind of stole the show for me.
That's awesome.
But yeah, liked the movie, didn't want to.
I went into this movie with very low expectations. I was 15 minutes late for the start of it, too. So that's about how low my expectations were. I thought this movie was really fun. I went into it thinking, oh my god, this is going to be garbage. I looked up the Rotten Tomatoes review, as I always do on my way to the theater, because I don't know, I like to know exactly what I'm getting into, and I saw, 50%. That's pretty middle, that's pretty average.
It's a coin toss.
It's a coin toss, and turns out I was the 50% that just would happen to like this movie. Even though I will acknowledge that a lot of it was garbage, a lot of it was really crude, a lot of it was, like, juvenile. Like, some of the jokes in this movie were like, wow, that was written by a child. But other than that, I thought it was just a fun and wild time, and it was 2 hours, but it felt like it didn't really overstay its welcome at all.
Yeah, and that's so rare in movies nowadays. So many times I'll find myself, like, secretly checking my phone because I don't want to bug the person behind me, but I'm like, I'm still here. I'm still in this theater.
The pacing was good in it, I think.
Which is arguably kind of impressive considering the quality of the movie.
Oh, yeah. What did you think of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's performance?
Okay, well, as we discussed, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson played himself in this movie. I honestly don't even remember the name of Davis. He played Davis. I just kept calling him Dwayne because that's who he was. He was, somebody grabbed him and they were like, today you're going to be, you know, a zoologist and you're going to be privy to all the, like, things you need to know when it comes to knowing about animals. And I don't think he showcased that once, besides doing the Chris Pratt, you know, everybody freeze, animals stay back. When I saw that, I was like, wow, they straight just ripped that from Jurassic World.
Oh, yeah.
Like, okay, you know, but for the movie it is, to put Dwayne Johnson in it, it's a no-brainer. You know, he played the part he was supposed to play. You want to talk about Malin Ackerman? Malin Ackerman.
Was she the kind of the villain lady?
Yeah, she was Claire Wyden.
Yeah, so, well, you had the two villains, which were the Wyden siblings?
Yeah, siblings.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I missed that part, if they were siblings.
They bring it up once.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's left to your own.
So it's like, Claire Wyden, is the really, like, competent, and she's really competent, and she's kind of the actual bad guy, and her brother is kind of a dumb
tool.
oaf. He's like a rich kid, and he doesn't really know what he's doing, and he's just in charge of it.
Can we just talk about Brett Wyden for a second?
Sure.
No offense to Jake Lacey, but I could have done this entire movie without him in it. Not him, the actor, but the part he played was totally irrelevant. I can only assume he was in there so they can be like, look at how, you know, awesome this girl is by comparison to how dumb this guy is. She was awesome enough she could have stood alone. I didn't need a measuring tool to be like, wow, this guy's trash. That's all I kept thinking when I saw him on screen. I was just like, why are you here? I don't want you here. You're not even playing bad guy right. You're barely managing stupid.
I think he's just there to be a henchman to her, the actual villain. Other than that, he's kind of unimportant.
But then when you watch the movie, he's not even the one doing anything. Like, they have their militia, and then she's getting things done. He's just there to not be funny.
Yeah. Harvey Russell. I thought this was a different actor.
What a great way to bring him to life. I thought he was someone else.
He plays a government agent in the movie, and he's very much like this kind of. He's a very cowboy character. He's got that cowboy nobility, and he's pretty funny throughout it too.
Yeah, Jeffrey Dean Morgan did good. I don't know. I like when I saw him, I was like, I swear I've seen him in something else, and I was trying to spend a lot of time like trying to nail that down, and I couldn't. And then I realized I was enjoying his performance, and I was like, okay, it doesn't really matter. I think he did a pretty good job. If it was a little, I don't know, stereotypical.
Because I don't know actor faces, I was thinking like, is that like Benicio del Toro or something? Something within that general dartboard of actor faces, because he kind of does have that look to him.
He does.
Kind of gruff looking.
He's very, you know, you can put him in a lot of spots.
Okay,
Tofu-esque.
Moving on, what did you think of the monsters in the movie?
So
one of them's kind of a spoiler to reveal because they haven't been in the trailer material.
Yeah, but it's based off a game that is older than a lot of people who went to see it, so you know, whatever. But the monsters were probably where I was strictest. Like I was watching George, and he was in like a rare white gorilla.
Yeah.
And I was just like, George was not a white gorilla. And I know that's so dumb, but I was just like, come on, he was a brown gorilla. What was the point of changing it up to be like, oh, he's this rare? It served no real purpose other than to set him apart from the other gorillas we see in the movie.
If I had to make a industry guess, it's because they didn't want him to look too much like King Kong. They wanted to avoid that. That's
true, but there's this whitewashing of gorillas in our media. And I'm just kidding. But
gorilla whitewashing. We've invented a new problem.
That's right.
Everybody.
That's right. We need to talk about this on social media. But Ralph bugged me too. The biggest thing that bugged me about the animals was that they weren't all bipedal, and they are, and it bugs me because I'm just like, that definitely gives George a leg up on all of them, because Ralph and Lizzie are supposed to. In the actual game, side note, they're people that turn into animals.
Right.
They get experimented on by that company whose name escapes me right now.
Energine or Wyden.
Our most
Technologies.
newest Shadow Corporation.
Yeah, we have another Shadow Corporation. Right. We have another kaiju movie.
We can make like a bingo list of all of this. But yeah, Ralph was my personal favorite, and not only does he get the least screen time, he, spoiler alert, gets killed off first.
Yep.
And he's just a literal giant wolf, which, I don't know, a monkey would destroy him.
Well, he's a giant wolf covered in quills, though. That's another thing.
Which I don't recall him ever using.
He does.
Does he like shoot them off?
Yeah, he like wags his little butt and then shoots quills out of his tail at a helicopter. And
okay, you know what stuck out to me was that he was a flying wolf, which
he had like flying squirrel.
I thought was one of the stupidest things ever. I can't see a wolf gliding menacingly towards someone without like just laughing at him. He loses all intimidation. He could be in the midst of devouring me, and I still would laugh. You know.
Finishing up, what did you think of the action in this movie? Did you think the quality of it was good? Did you think it was entertaining to watch?
I have this desire to compare it to Pacific Rim, since it was our other big budget kaiju monster battle movie, and I liked this one a lot more. Probably because I didn't have to compare it to its predecessor, like Pacific Rim suffers from that sequelitis, but I really liked it, for the most part, especially, you know, when we get to the end and we get that big monster battle payoff that we were all looking for. I think they did it really well. I think they did a really good job of turning Lizzie into this, like, overpowered, destructive, like, behemoth, because not only were the monsters, the interpretations different, the sizes were, too, which was also really weird for me, but...
George was pretty small,
compared,
to the
right?
others,
It was really weird. I'm like, you could practically squash him, but, you know, for the most part, I think the action did a good pacing. There's this really cool scene, actually, towards the end, where Dwayne is he's parkouring across a building that's falling, and this shot was so cool. I was lost in it because it was taken above, so it looks like he's running on the floor, but he's actually running off the side of a surface of a building, and you can see Lizzie's eye as like she's trying to get a lock on where he is, and I was just lost. The thing with bad movies is that when that happens, it gets a much bigger spotlight, because I was like, in such a movie, this scene was really cool. So yeah, action was cool.
Okay, I really like the action too. They did kind of stick to a consistent thing of The Rock gets in a helicopter and says a one-liner before doing something. That was every scene in the movie.
Those one-liners, like, oh my god.
One-liner, slight zoom into The Rock's face.
He's seeing like people getting murdered by the hundreds, and he's just like, man, Mondays. And I'm just like, dude, people are dying. Like, give me a little more range. Maybe be sad a little bit.
Yeah, that's the thing. None of the characters never really take any brunt of emotion from anything that happens in the movie.
You got to figure the casualty list at the end of this is probably really high, and they're just all like, man, monsters are everywhere.
Tons of people are dying. And it's just like, oh, well, I'm having fun.
You know?
Okay. So now that we're done going through the things we usually talk about in the spoiler-free part of it, what would you give the movie on a scale of 1 to 10? I know, right? Remember, it's not like school. It's not like if you get a 60%, you're gonna be working in fast food for the rest of your life or anything. 60% is a movie that I would watch.
Okay, I'm gonna give this movie a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10?
It's kind of bad, but I would probably rewatch it. I wouldn't pay for it again, but I would definitely rewatch it, which is more than I can say for Pacific Rim.
I'm going to give this movie also a 6 out of 10 because it was really fun. When I was done, I was like, oh, that was good, and it's over, and I can go home now, but I'm not mad about it. Like, it went by quickly. I went into the movie theater, I sat down, I had a stomachache when I went in, I had the same stomachache when I came out. But it was like, oh man, usually something's changed by now.
That's right. It didn't add to the day, but it didn't detract from it, which is all I can ask for.
Yeah. So, that's our spoiler-free kind of review of the movie. You can stop listening now if you want to, or if you don't, and we're going to jump right into spoilers and do kind of a fun little plot synopsis. So, let's go. Okay, so let's hop into the plot synopsis. Since I missed the first 15 minutes of the movie, would you like to fill me in on what happened in the very beginning of it?
Yeah, okay, the movie started in a really weird way. I feel like when you're in a movie theater and you sit down and you get to watch a movie, you can see it begin and go, I am in the beginning of a movie. I sat down, I was looking at the screen, and I just zoned out. And I was like, have I been watching this movie? Is this the beginning? So we got a scientist working for, what's the company again? Energyne. And she's in space, and she's working on some, hush-hush stuff. And everything starts falling apart. There's an emergency situation. She's like, the rat's loose. Already using the context of the movie, I was like, giant rat on space station. Almost like this is kind of the movie I want to watch. But I was still trying to decide if I was actually watching the right movie or not. And she sits there and she gets to the escape pod and she's like, I got to get out. And our villain, Claire Wyden, she's on the other line and she's like, you need to go get the research. You either come back with the research or you don't come back at all. Dun, dun, dun. Dang. And you're just kind of like, whoa, whoever's on the other line is stone cold.
Part of a big evil corporation,
yeah,
obviously.
Here we are. And so she runs back to get the experiments. And already, you can kind of be like, this isn't going to turn out well for our nameless female scientist. So she's gathering the research, and she starts heading back to the escape pod. And she actually gets away. We see the rat chase after, and the rat has quills. And it's all deformed and looking all weird. And it gets to the escape pod right as she's closing it, and it starts banging against it. And so she's safe, and she's launching away. But because of the banging of the glass gets cracked, and she starts burning up upon re-entry into Earth, and she dies, and just boom.
And bad luck.
Pieces everywhere, but those pieces spread across the research in like these little pods of what will eventually, give us our giant movie-esque animals. Around what time did you get in?
I got in as those things were crashing down.
Okay, so we got some re-entry happening.
Yeah.
It's breaking across. And yeah, I mean, it does a nice little spread of where it's going, and we don't know too much about the corporation at this point, but we can assume this is what's going to give us our monster movies. I mean, our movie monsters, rather. But yeah.
Okay, so at this point in the movie, what's happening with The Rock and George? Because I walked in and they were having an interaction.
Okay, so we see Dwayne with a group in tow, and for the most part, I thought he was doing essentially being a tour guide for these people. Turns out later these people work for him, and I find that to be an issue. But so they're leading through the area. He's introducing him to his gorilla troop, I think he called them, and George isn't here yet, and there's this younger gorilla whose name escapes me because, he's only on screen for like 2 more minutes. And he's new. His family was murdered by poachers, and he's trying to assert his dominance in the troop. And George, being the alpha male of the troop, he ain't gonna have that. So there's this guy Connor, and he's trying to impress the female of the troop. He's not the troop, of Dwayne's team, and he's trying to tell I've been to Uganda, I've done all this stuff, I'm so cool. They all kind of call him on his BS. And then when this young adult gorilla gets in there, Dwayne does the little Chris Pratt thing, and he's like, everybody stay calm. We don't want to start anything, because George shows up, and now they're in between this gorilla duel. And so he's like, everybody remain calm. And of course, you got to have that character who's Connor, who does not remain calm. And he starts freaking out, and he starts running, and the young adult goes to attack Connor. George pushes it out of the way, takes it down, and he stands in front of Connor like he's going to attack him. Like he's ready to kill him, and he's all, oh. And Dwayne rolls in. He's like, don't do this, don't hurt him. You don't want to do this. And it turns out that George is just messing around, because George is so intelligent. Mm-hmm. Not only can George sign, but George can understand the concept of irreverent humor.
Oh,
and George is like, I'm gonna mess with this guy.
There are a lot of things in this movie, and that I have in my notes that are like, that's not accurate about how gorillas work.
I was like, wow, not only can this gorilla do sign language, but this gorilla is intelligent enough to create some dark comedy in this moment.
This gorilla understands the nuances of human humor. This gorilla has asked a question, which is something an animal has literally never done, except for humans. This gorilla has expressed desires that it wouldn't know about ordinarily.
This gorilla has emotions and a desire to learn, a desire to take part in human nuances, like you said. And the gorilla understands when someone actually poses a threat upon him and someone doesn't, which I think it's kind of out of the animal wheelhouse.
So pre-magic science experiment that transforms him, we can already see very smart gorilla.
Already. Yeah. You could have given me that after that, and I could, suspend my disbelief. But beforehand, this gorilla's already doing stuff. Why is Dwayne in charge of this? Why isn't this gorilla broadcast, nationwide? So
then there's this, we also meet this nerdy dude named Nelson, and he's kind of he plays a comedic relief. I thought he was going to be a lot bigger in the movie, but he's only in the first act a couple times.
I thought that about the entire team Dwayne walks with. I thought they were the team we were carrying on through the movie. Not the case. But see, my issue is that they all work for him, and not Nelson, but the other two, the girl and Connor, not only do they not display the, qualifications I would expect them to have for the job.
Right.
Connor is the epitome of someone who fudged his resume and got the job. How do you work in a place they roam free in this gorilla enclosure, as we see those two do later without Dwayne or Nelson.
Right.
And they have free reign to just walk around and interact with these gorillas, but he doesn't have the wherewithal to understand that you have to remain calm and, keep a steady presence in front of these gorillas. He freaks out like a child. I would have fired him on the spot.
Yeah. They're like, oh, clearly you aren't fit to work with these animals. They're very dangerous animals that can tear you apart with their bare hands.
Can I see your references again?
All those reference numbers, disconnected numbers? What's the deal with that, buddy? So it gets established that Akoi, he's kind of like Grizzly Man in the way that he really likes animals. He connects more with animals than humans, and he has bad encounters with humans throughout the movie where he's really rude and assertive with them in the way that a gorilla might be. This is mine, and I want to do this, and you're not going to get in my way.
Can we just talk about a world, this fictitious world they want us to believe in, where an attractive girl like Brienne Hill asks Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson out, and he says no. He says, I'd rather be with my puppies because I just don't get people. Yeah, okay, Dwayne. I can clearly buy the idea that you're a shut-in who doesn't like to interact with people. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, don't they also connect it to he was messed up by his time in the service? Because he was a military member before.
But they don't give us that till later on the helicopter.
That's true.
So really up until this point, I'm led to believe that Dwayne just sees a really pretty girl that at least has the credentials to work with him. So she has to be at some sort of intellectual, equality with him. And he's just like, nope, you're not a dog, so I don't want to hang out with you. It's okay.
All right, dude. I gotta read my notes here that were written in a dark movie theater. All of the objects fell from the sky. One of them landed in the gorilla enclosure, one of them landed in a forest in Wyoming, and one of them landed in Florida?
Yeah, the swamplands.
Yeah, the bayou of Florida.
Everglades or,
And that's just to show that they are going to be, the monsters we're going to be fighting throughout this movie.
Right.
Something that lives in a bayou. They don't show it at first, but it's obviously an alligator.
What else was it going to be?
The wolves. They show wolves when the wolf one lands, and George's was obvious. It was going to be George. They don't mess around much with it here because it just cuts immediately to the next morning, and then you got to come to the gorilla enclosure, or no, the grizzly bear enclosure. So Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Nelson go to the grizzly bear enclosure and see a dead grizzly bear, its neck snapped, and George is like hanging out in a cave, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a scared monkey." And he's grown like several feet, and he's a lot bigger now, and he's got like big cut marks all over him. And what happens next?
Well, Nelson brings a gun because Nelson is, I don't know, the realest character in the movie, and he's like, "This is a dangerous animal. I'm gonna bring a tranquilizer gun." Dwayne's like, no, he doesn't like guns because not only can this gorilla have the intellectual capacity to tell jokes, but this gorilla's like, he'll see that as a sign of aggression, so he's gonna come at you. And it's okay, whatever, fine, Dwayne, I'll buy it. And he goes in there, and they do this scene where he talks him out of the cave, and he stands up, and everybody's like, you know, it's played off like in shock, like, wow, he's so much bigger. You could see the size difference in the cave, though. Mm-hmm. So how did they not already make that connection? George, at this point, is 7 feet tall, I believe they say. Mm-hmm. He's big enough that he would make a killing in the NBA, and nobody could stop him. But they're just, and his size, like his actual size, he gained like hundreds of pounds, but they're just like, no, it's okay, come on, George. He just snapped a grizzly bear's neck in half, and they don't show it to us, obviously, but by the size of his arms, I'm going to believe he did it one-handed. And 2 people have come in. They've put down the gun, and they're going to talk the gorilla out calmly. Got it.
Totally rational decision to bring a firearm with you. Honestly, don't get on Nelson too bad here. The Rock follows protocol and puts George in a cage, and they're like studying him, doing blood tests on him to see what's up with him, because gorillas aren't supposed to grow this fast. And like they get the results back, it's like all these levels are crazy, even though nothing they said probably means anything. And all of his levels are crazy, and he's growing crazy fast. We don't understand why this is happening. And The Rock's like, I don't want the government to come and take him. He's my friend. That one woman shows up, the scientist. What's her name again?
Her name is, in the movie, Dr. Kate Caldwell. We were actually introduced to her a little earlier, and we've given... I love how the camera pans, and the first thing it shows us is like a biogenetics textbook. Like, oh yeah, she studies. But she's led to be kind of a basket case. She shows up. She's already making an excuse for why she's not going to be on work on time. She's trying to find a cup of coffee that still has coffee in it because she just keeps them all on her counter. Mm-hmm. And she sees what's going on, and she's like, I've got to go see Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson now. So she shows up at his office, like you said, at this moment, and they're like, she knows what's going on. So he's like, tell me everything you know. And she's like, I can't, that's OPSEC. And he's like, yeah, okay, guess what? You're not going to find out anything either.
Then she says something that's like, I can kind of help you. And Dwayne's like, oh, yeah, come check it out.
All defenses. I changed my mind
Immediately
completely.
Changes his mind about her. And then they go into the lab where George is, and he's like, I'm hungry, ook, ook. And he's doing the sign for hunger. And then he gets mad, and he starts breaking out of the cage.
Yeah, Dwayne's like, get George some food. Mm-hmm. 5 minutes go by of discussion, and again, he's talking about how he's hungry. This is a gorilla who already, there can be an aggressive species.
Right.
It's grown exponentially, and it wants food. Why didn't you have food, like, on hand? Why is it taking so long to get him the food? This is not an angry passenger on a plane. Get the gorilla the food.
What do gorillas eat? Bananas?
I feel like that's such a stereotype.
I know.
That's what I was going to say.
I don't want to. Oh man, I don't want to stereotype those gorillas.
I don't know. This gorilla is very intelligent. I don't want to offend him. You know?
He's very intelligent and very large.
Yeah, and he snapped a grizzly bear. He snapped a grizzly bear's neck.
So George gets mad and breaks out, and then Homeland Security shows up and takes him down because he's going on a rampage throughout the city. Which, was this in California or something at the beginning?
Yeah. LA, I believe.
San Diego?
Somewhere. It's in California.
Yeah. So he starts rampaging throughout the city, and then Homeland Security comes and takes him down, and The Rock and... what's her face? I keep forgetting her name.
Dr. Kate Caldwell.
Kate Caldwell. They all get apprehended by the government and under the guise of Homeland Security, and then they get loaded onto a C-17. And we meet
Harvey Russell.
Harvey Russell, the head of the OAG, which is a fake government organization in the
definitely.
movie. Yeah, and he's at first very antagonistic. They kind of paint him to have you think, oh, he's going to be kind of another antagonist throughout the movie. Like he's a G-man and he doesn't care. Mm-hmm. So they load the gorilla onto the plane. Obviously, probably not a very good idea. Wyden send out some mercenaries to go and track down one of the things that fell, and this was in southern Wyoming where the wolves were. So they went to go find the object. They encounter the giant wolf, and it kills all of the mercenaries there. And there was a character who, in this scene, I thought was going to be like, oh, he's going to be a recurring character throughout the movie. Yeah, he dies really quickly.
All I could think about was the missed opportunity of a fist fight between him and Dwayne Johnson. Mm-hmm. I thought we were going to get that, and he dies so quickly, and I'm just like, oh, never mind.
Well, here's what I thought was going to happen. I thought this was going to be the guy, he's going to go there, his whole squad's going to die except for him, and then he's going to be mad at the mutant animals, and then try to kill George later in the movie. That's where I thought they were going with his character. Turns out no, he gets swallowed whole by a wolf.
Yeah. Also, as intelligent as George is, we got to give some credit to Ralph, because Ralph takes out every ancillary character like as quickly as possible. But then he gets to Burke and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna make this shot really cool for the movie, so I'm gonna creep up behind Burke and just kind of grimace for a moment." This wolf has been mowing people down, but he understands the dramatic tension of just doing the slow growl behind him, and intelligent animals, man.
Yep, very smart.
Animals.
So we get back to the Wydens, and they now know about the wolf attack, and they're like, we should try to lure in all of these animals to our building in the middle of downtown Chicago. I don't know why you would think that's a good idea, to put the lure on a building in the middle of a population center.
I'm so confused why this plan was their big one, because they talk about how they have this cure that'll get rid of the aggression, because they want to utilize these animals and study them. Couldn't you have just done another helicopter thing and shot the cure at them?
Yeah.
Or why would you risk the entire city?
Exactly.
And if you want to be like, oh, they're bad guys, why would you risk yourselves?
Why would you risk your own building? Just get a warehouse and stuff it out there, like 20 miles away from city center Chicago.
But no, they're like, we're just going to destroy everything, risk everything to cure these animals in a very irrelevant way. And then they never explain how they're going to cure them either. Because as we see later, the vials are like, I don't know, the length of a pencil. How are you going to do that from your building? And all your soldiers are dead. Were you going to send your brother to just go do that? Because we've already shown that he can't do anything.
If the cure is that easy to store that it can be in a single vial, just put that in a bullet and shoot it at the monsters from a helicopter.
I don't understand their plan.
Whatever.
Bad guys do not bad guy.
Yeah, they're not very smart bad guys. So they're like, well, we'll just bring the monsters here and then we'll kill them and then we'll sell their weaponized DNA because we're bad guys. That's the thing we do. And then they turn on this device which sends out radio frequencies that makes all the animals just go crazy and start running towards this object. Back on the plane with The Rock, George, the OAG head, and Kate. Obviously there's going to be bad stuff going down here. George hears the radio signal, wakes up, and starts wrecking the plane. Russell gets knocked out. He gets his arm caught in cargo netting. Dwayne doesn't have within him to shoot at George with a tranquilizer gun, and he ends up saving all of them as the plane is falling out of the sky.
Dwayne doesn't have it in him to shoot George with a tranquilizer gun, but he does have it in him to drop a forklift on him.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Which I was so sure impaled him. When I saw it hit, I was like, whoa!
No, I think the implication was one of them went like in between his legs and the other one went outside, and he was just kind of being held against the wall by the forklift.
That's an impressive know-how in the moment to be like, okay, if I drop this at this angle, it's not going to hurt him, it's just going to trap him. Like, Dwayne Johnson, you're being underutilized in your position.
So the plane's going out. The Rock saves all of the relevant characters on the plane, except for George, who goes down in the plane. Immediately, they're like, oh no, he's dead. He must have died in the plane crash. Immediately after they go to the crash site, he's like, there's no body here, so guess he's not dead.
No concept of detention. He might be dead. Nope, no, it's fine, guys.
This is where George kind of exits being a main character in the movie for a while, because he's just hanging out with the wolf and they're making their way cross-country to Chicago.
We missed a really good opportunity for him to be riding the wolf.
That's true.
That would have just been awesome. Instead, they were just... I just found it hard to believe that he was maintaining pace with the wolf, which was, I don't know, at this point, a giant behemoth crossing the plains.
So, like, if you had to cross the country going from California to Chicago, there's a lot of flat land, which means, like, not a lot of trees to kind of guerrilla your way through.
Guerrilla your way.
Yeah. So... that must have taken several weeks.
And we already talked about the size difference. He could have easily rode Ralph, and there wouldn't have been a big deal, and it would have been a really awesome shot.
Yeah, it would have been pretty cool. A lot of time kind of goes by in the movie here. The Rock and Kate and Russell all get sent to an army base where the military's like, we're in charge of this situation now, which is never good because the military's usually incompetent in these kinds of movies, which they prove to be totally incompetent in this movie. One thing about well, I mean, you know this, being former military, is you watch movies with military in them and see all of the mistakes.
Oh yeah, and my roommate is former military too. So at this scene, we were just like, "Oh, that's wrong." And
Yep, that's wrong.
Look at this. I couldn't stop laughing at this think tank full of nothing but officers all working together. So we've got this colonel in charge, and on the comms is a captain.
Yep.
And I'm just like, yeah, put the captain on communications, because that's what he's there for.
You got Air Force security forces wearing MP stuff and being called MPs. They're like, the military's like, we don't want anything to do with you guys, even though you guys know the most about these creatures, more than anybody else in the world, but whatever, knowledge isn't power, get that out of here. The Rock and Kate kind of get apprehended. The Rock assaults and knocks out two military police officers, which is just fine.
End of movie.
Seriously. He would have gotten shot.
First of all,
he runs down an alleyway and the cop doesn't shoot him. That's the problem.
So many problems. Okay, first of all, who sees a man the size of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and sends 2 people to escort him? Just go ahead.
Yeah.
And they're not at the low ready. They're not anticipating. And like you said, he darts down an alleyway. Not only do they not raise their weapons, they talk to him first. He has time to ask questions, make these quips like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock you out.
Exactly.
Shoot him. Shoot him now.
He goes through his whole plan. It's like, no, you should pull a firearm on him because he's clearly not participating. Like, he's not following the rules of what it means to be a prisoner.
And this is not like, like some garrison or anything. This is essentially a wartime scenario.
Exactly.
There are giant monsters, and you're worried about this one guy. Shoot him down.
A clear and present threat, and you're just going to be like, let's be really patient with this potentially really dangerous guy.
I don't have a name in this movie. I'm just gonna, make terrible mistakes in life decisions.
They're sneaking around the base, and Russell shows up, and he confronts them, and he's like, you saved my life earlier, and I'm a cowboy, and I got that cowboy honor, so here's the keys to a helicopter. Hope you know how to fly this.
I didn't know cowboy honor was a thing.
Yeah.
Until this movie.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, cowboy honor must be
honor.
a thing. And yeah, we're given no assumption that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson knows how to fly a helicopter. We're told earlier with George encaged on that helicopter, the previous one, that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is special forces. He's done this and that. He's been across the world, but nowhere in there is the credential of pilot listed. It's just special forces. They all know how to fly helicopters, right?
Sure, why not?
Sure.
It's a movie. Suspension of disbelief. So they then take the helicopter and they make their way to Chicago to catch up with the animals.
Oh, they were heading over, and we got our first actual view of Lizzie the Lizard, who started casing the boathouse and climbing up through the streets and started attacking.
Right.
And I think Lizzie the Lizard might have stopped the helicopter's progress. Point is, they get grounded, and they have to, deal with these animals all at once while they try to make their way to the White Building.
So the rest of the movie's kind of a big city fight. You've seen city fights in movies before with big monsters. Honestly, a lot of it's really straightforward and kind of cookie cutter. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Kate sneak into the Energyne lab, and they try to get the cure, and they get encountered by the Wyden siblings.
Where are their personnel?
Right?
They are
There's nobody
owners of, this multi-million-dollar corporation. They had enough money to buy an independent militia for nothing, but there's nobody in this building
totally
to
empty.
Stop. It just cuts right to them into this secret lab. I'm like, how did this happen? I mean, sure, Kate used to work for Energyne. She worked like 2 years prior, but there was nobody along the way. No litter of bodies, at least something.
Once in the lab, when I think they've just found the cure for the antidote for it, the Wydens encounter them, and then Wyden's sister shoots Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in the gut, or like in the side right here.
Yeah, first her brother has the gun, and I'm like, why would you give him the gun? He's already proven to be totally useless, and then she takes it from him anyway.
Yeah,
so
he's still useless. He's just carrying the bags in this movie. The Rock gets shot, and it's like, oh my god, I can't believe they shot The Rock. Will he survive?
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes, he will.
So they take Kate up onto the roof of the building, and then the monsters show up because they're trying to get to the top of the building to destroy the radio tower. Who knew that they were trying to come and destroy the radio tower in the middle of the city?
What were the Wydens' plan at this point?
I have no idea.
Because then, before they get to the top, they're talking about, okay, get the chopper started, we need to get out of here, evacuate. If you were just going to leave the building, why didn't you have your guys set up this radio tower on a different building? So you could, watch the progress from afar or something. Why would you cut it so close to the wire?
Exactly. So, two of the monsters are fighting on top of the building. It isn't all three, is it? I think it's just
no. For
Lizzie
a while, it's just Lizzie, And it's Lizzie and George.
Yeah.
Ralph, for whatever reason, is taking a while, even though when it showed them climbing, he was at the fastest rate.
Yeah.
He was straight up galloping vertically up the building.
He got distracted.
George was taking the longest. He was... George
the climbing animal that's literally all about climbing, takes a really long...
And for whatever reason, Lizzie's dancing through the building. Like, she gets to a certain point and just says, whatever, I'm going to go inside the building. And she just goes inside.
Yeah, very agile for an alligator, which are not known to be agile.
It was weird. It was just really weird.
George straight up just eats Wyden's sister.
So they... First off, George stops the helicopter from progressing because that was their big escape. Oh no, who would have thought the monsters would stop us from leaving? And so Claire Wyden's brother says, forget this, and he runs away. So we're left with Claire, who's like, you two are going to distract the gorilla and I'm going to get away. Still don't understand what her plan there was. George takes the pilot, grabs him, chucks him away. Clearly, George is not eating everyone.
Yeah. Which
is against Rampage rules if we're talking about the video game. He has no interest in eating everyone. But yet, Kate's plan is to give Claire the antidote, punch her, and get her grabbed by George under the assumption that George was going to eat her. But there's no proof that that was going to happen. He could have easily tossed her just like the last guy he had in his hand. And where would they have been then? But no, for movie purposes, I guess Claire Wyden was just really tasty looking.
Yep. She just got gobbled up by George. And then The Rock shows up, and it turns out he's fine, and he saves Kate by getting in a second helicopter in this movie. This is helicopter number 2. There's still another one on the horizon. He gets in the helicopter. There's no tail on it, and he's just like, it's cool. We just need a little bit of lift, and we'll ride the building down like an avalanche. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, my roommate and I were discussing this, and we're both Army, so I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something as just an Army vet, but I have a feeling that this would not work. I feel like this wouldn't change anything, because they end up not riding the the building down anyway.
Yeah.
Because they hover above it, which wouldn't change their momentum.
Yeah, and they're lightly spinning, which is not what would happen if you didn't have the tail. No, they'd be super dead. Whatever. Action movie, suspension of disbelief. The building comes tumbling down, and then it's the big fight. When does George... Wait, at what point does George become normal again?
George ate Claire while they were up there, and then collapses in the building. He kind of shakes it off, and there's a moment where they're like, oh no, but then Dwayne's like, oh no, I've locked eyes with George. He's cool again. I can tell. Yeah.
So George is just like, oh... Hey, what's up, Rock? Long time no see. What you been doing? And then they're like, okay, well, we got to take down the lizard
and Ralph.
Yeah, and Ralph. So, I mean, it's a fight. The Rock gets in a helicopter at one point and shoots a volley of helicopter missiles at Lizzie, and it doesn't do anything. Just as we've seen throughout the whole movie, conventional weapons don't do anything. So why do people keep trying?
Lizzie looks like a giant dinosaur made of granite. Why would they be like, I'm just gonna blow her up? No. Also, Ralph's the first to die, which hurt me personally, but they proven earlier when the gorilla and Ralph were riding together that the monsters don't have any sort of aggression towards each other. They see each other as part of the same
They're totally
group.
chill with each other.
So Dwayne has this plan to have Lizzie come at him like, oh, look at me, and Lizzie goes to charge and bite. And he planned it so that Ralph would be flying at him at the same time. And Lizzie bites onto Ralph's throat.
And just rips his head off.
Sees Ralph as the enemy. As Ralph is supposed to be the team member. And Lizzie's just like, you know what? I'm just going to follow through on this bite anyway. And bites Ralph's head off and swallows it. Really cool moment, but why? You just made your odds so much harder.
You gotta commit.
We've shown 2 intelligent animals. Lizzie apparently not one of them.
I mean, alligators are dumb. They're dinosaurs. George gets impaled through the heart, and it's like, oh no, now George is gravely wounded too, and should logically die. But George and Dwayne The Rock Johnson, very similar. Then George uses the pole that he got impaled by to take down Lizzie by stabbing it in the head, and then it's like the happy ending of the movie where you think George is dead, and then he's like, oh no, I'm fine. Sex joke.
I have another problem. Not to derail the awesome sex joke, but I have another problem with Lizzie's takedown in that he goes to impale her and impales her through the eye. Now, with the way gators, their heads are shaped, I feel like the brain's like further back to where the actual skull is. He impales her through the eye, which would go down through the mouth, and she drops, does not put up any fight, and just instantly stays quiet. I thought for sure she was going to get back up because I'm like, I feel like the way he impaled her wouldn't have killed her.
Yeah.
We've seen her take missiles. At one point, The Rock throws a belt of grenades into her through the gills, which should have done the most damage, and she shrugged that off.
Yeah,
but no,
totally
some
fine.
rebar through the eye socket, done.
Yep.
Just done.
Why
and we
didn't
still
you-
have time for a sex joke.
Why didn't they just bring people with javelins in if that works so well?
I'm telling you, why don't we just have harpoon guns
Yeah,
at the ready for
exactly.
these situations?
So, we think that George is dead. He's lying on the ground, and he's gravely wounded from the fight. And then you see all these, you see a kid getting rescued, and it's like, oh man, George saved us all, even though he killed a lot of people. And then he wakes up, and The Rock is like, hey George, I'm so glad you're all right. And then George is like, hey, are you two gonna bone? And then that's basically the end of the movie.
I want to say though, the will they or won't they between The Rock and Kate Caldwell was played off really well because they didn't stress the romance and they never even had a kiss or anything. In this day and age where we're talking about progression and changes and dynamics of women's roles in movies, I think that Naomi Harris had a really good part.
She
and
did.
I don't know if it was her saying the matter, but she played the character really well. There wasn't any sort of objectification on her end, and if anybody, the most objectified character was The Rock.
Yep.
But, they're like, oh, you two gonna bone?
Yeah, it's like, all that's thrown away now.
yeah, it's like okay, good job, movie.
Wow, thanks for giving us a black female scientist character, which we never get in movies, and then making a crude sex joke about her at the very end of
Yeah,
it.
we came so close to progress.
We were so close to making something happen here. So yeah, that's the plot of...
The movie ended as abruptly as it began.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, haha, sex joke, Rampage.
Yep.
Roll credits. I was like, oh, okay.
Yep, exactly. And with that, we got to end the podcast. So thank you so much for listening if you've been listening. Cool. Bye, everyone.